Okay, be honest. Do you actually want to help or are you afraid of not being needed? We're going to solve that puzzle today on Off the Couch. And welcome to Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, because growth doesn't happen lying down. We are here in our new studio, which we haven't completely put together yet, but we'll get to that. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, psychologist. I'm here with producer Brian Gomez.
Happy Monday, you guys.
And also Tony Sweet on the board. Hi, Tony.
Hello, hello.
People can finally get a look at you.
I'm sorry.
Exciting. That's pretty exciting. So we're here in our new studio. We've just been trying because Tony moved his studio. He's out in God knows where.
BFE.
BFE. And and so we're setting up one here in my office building and in my office suite. And so we're getting our act together, but we haven't quite got our background together and everything yet, nor our microphone situation. We're going to be sharing a mic today. But
It's all a work in progress. We're getting there. It's going to look all really cool next week, watch.
But it's pulled at every trigger of mine. And so today, we did last week, we did not Addicted to Chaos.
Hustler culture.
We did hustle culture. I don't know, hustler culture might be a little bit different. But hustle culture, we did about working too hard and too much, which is certainly a disease I suffer from. And then today we're going to be talking about the need to be needed. So we're dealing with that sneaky little trap so many of us fall into, that need to be needed. And you might call it helping, Brian, but other people label it codependency. I don't know what I call it. I think either way, it's exhausting. But don't worry, you guys. We got tools to help build yourself up. And we're going to talk about the hidden trap of the helper complex.
Before we go any further, can you explain what codependency is? Because since you said you still label it that way, I feel like we're getting confused with what actually codependency is.
Okay. So in general, we've got independence, where we operate on our own. I'm holding up one hand, like operate standing up independently. We have dependence, which is we operate based on somebody else. Somebody is standing up independently and we lean against them. That's dependence. Codependency is when you lean on each other, when you seem to need each other, and if one falters, the other falls. So if one can't handle it, it's like a TP, two sides of an isosceles triangle, that if one falls, the other side falls.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense? What is ideal in relationships is interdependence. So interdependence is when you have two sides right next to each other who are helping each other out, but they function and can function independently as well. So they both they're interdependent as well as independent. But they often do lean on the other person and they really do value them, but they can function on their own.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Oh, that's most helpful to know that you didn't know. So thank you.
I'm sure a lot of people did make that.
Well, it's such a buzzword in our community, in the therapy community. I hate it. I almost never use it, but I do know that it's a popular buzzword. There's a big book called Codependency No More and all this stuff. But what intrigued me about this topic, especially on the heels of the hustle culture, was also me. And just to let you know, I have my brother's in the hospital. You guys know this. Brian knows this. Tony knows this. But letting you guys, my brother's in the hospital. He's still in the hospital. My brother has intellectual disabilities. And it's been really, really hard for me emotionally. And it's always hard for me emotionally dealing with some of my family issues. It's interesting to me because as a therapist, I don't feel like that's emotionally difficult work. I can do that for hours. The only thing I get is tired physically, but I don't get tired emotionally. And I've looked at that from many angles to see why that might be, but I I do see that there's an issue when it comes up in close friends or family that sometimes I falter, and I've had to get a hard look at myself, especially with my brother and what's going on. So let's find out, Brian, if you're a helper, or you're helpless. Well, do it for me too. And Tony, I want you to take this quiz too. Let's do it. I only have 5 questions. On my handout that I'm going to have available, I have 10 questions. So it's a little more thorough, 5 questions more thorough, but this will get us a good flavor. These are 5 very salient questions. But this is to see, are you helper or helpless? Are you helping or losing yourself in the process? So over the last month, think of the last 30 days, you guys. How would you put up a finger and we'll just go through this? I feel guilty when I say no to someone who needs my help. I often put others' needs before my own, even when I'm exhausted. If someone is upset, I feel responsible for fixing it. Wow, I'm surprised here. I sometimes worry that if I stop helping, people won't need me anymore. And I find it hard to relax unless everyone else is okay first. So we can see who the problem is. I'm holding up 3 fingers. Brian's holding up 2. And Tony's holding up
1.5.
What? Not what that is. Coney, tell us, what's your 1.5? What sticks out for you? I can read them again. I feel guilty when I say no to someone who needs my help. I often put others' needs before my own, even when I'm exhausted. If someone's upset, I feel responsible for fixing it. I sometimes worry that if I stop helping, people won't need me, and I find it hard to relax unless everyone else is okay first.
Put it this way, 10 years ago, it would have been all 5.
Wow.
But now, definitely when somebody gets upset, I want to help and I feel guilty, but I try not to if it's something that I really can't help with. And then what was the first one?
Guilty when you say no to someone who needs your help.
That's the half.
Okay.
Yeah.
You feel guilty-ish.
Yeah. Because especially if I see like a homeless woman with a child or something and I don't like help or, I want to, but I just, I know I can't help everyone. So.
So not very Jean Valjean of you. That's the weird reference I made. Les Miserables. I like it though. Oh, it's a good one. So what about you, Brian? You had 2.
I had 2. For me, it's the first one that I feel guilty when I say no to someone who needs my help. If it's somebody close to me, I feel like I am obligated no matter what to help them. Especially because my close friends always usually help me. Like that's something that which is even if I hated doing something, I remember one of my best friends he forgot his passport when he was already at the airport, and this was for an international job. He also didn't have somebody to open the door, so he had to call a locksmith. So I had to meet the locksmith at his apartment. It became even so much more expensive. Anyways, it was probably the only person I would go and do this for because he is my best friend. And I'm like, I feel like I had to do it. And the second one for me, if someone's upset, I feel responsible to fix it. And that I know is a big little flaw for me. Even remember my friends that had a fight recently that I was still trying to fix it. I was a little part of it, but it wasn't my responsibility at all to fix. Or even when friends or anything complain about something that they're dealing with or they're mad or upset at somebody, I'm always like, beat them up. Like, I want to fix whatever is wrong, So those are my deal.
Beat them up.
Yeah. Like if they're dealing with like a annoying boss or like somebody's treating them bad, I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, let's take care of this right now. So.
How mafia of you?
Brian's got a little mafia in him. So I definitely feel guilty when I say just no to someone who needs my help. And it's really interesting that I was saying that in therapy, I generally don't feel this stuff, but I do feel it for a prospective client. when I have to turn someone down and they're like, but I really want to see you, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel bad. It doesn't last a huge amount of time, but I do feel bad about that when I don't think it's a good match for whatever reason. And also, or I don't have time. Sometimes I just don't have time. And that goes for current clients who want to schedule an appointment and I don't have the time to offer them. But I've often fudged that by giving up some of my time, putting others' needs before my own, like giving extra time during the day, which is not fair to other people in the roster, not fair to me. So I do see that I've got at least 3 of these. I definitely feel guilty when I say no to someone who needs my help, especially with my family. And my family will ask for things that sometimes I just don't want to do, especially because it may require a great deal of time. And I feel bad saying this because I have family who listened to this podcast. So thank you. And I'm sorry, family, but I'm just being as honest as I can possibly be.
And I've seen you do this. Like, I always get on you for spreading yourself too thin, or like when somebody even asks you to write something or an article or anything and you don't have the time in your schedule at all to do it, you still force yourself to do it because somebody just asked you. You're one of those people, if somebody asks, you're just like, okay, even if there's no way you can possibly do it.
It's true, and it's not good. It's definitely a behavior I need to work on. I'll tell you what happens in my head, though, at the moment that I actually think, oh, I can do that. I can handle this. I can take this on. I've taken on so many big things that I'm like, oh, this is nothing. And something like writing an article, like, oh, I can spit that out in a couple hours, 2-3 hours. I can get that together. So I think things like that. But I like with the most recent article, I was falling asleep in front of my computer, like, at the end of the night trying to write something. And I've tried to do emails at the end of the night, and I'll send an email that will just be gibberish. Part of it will be okay, but it will be such poor judgment on my part to have done that. So I do need to watch those kinds of behaviors. And that's something I've struggled with my entire life. I definitely have gotten better, but I do see that this has been an issue for me. Often putting other people before my own, even when I'm exhausted. Oh, yeah, that's that one. And if someone is upset, I feel responsible for fixing it. If someone's upset around me, and it doesn't go to someone I don't know, it's typically someone I know, that if they feel upset, I don't want to take away their upsetness per se. I don't want to fix their upsetness, but if it's something I can be of help in, I do want to be there for them, or I want to give them space to be upset. But if someone aims their upsetness at me, like gets upset at me, I do not respond as well as you might believe. I'll be like, don't yell at me, don't do that. So,
which, I think is kind of good to do.
It can be, but often, I'm like, do not pull that with me, not now.
You're still setting boundaries.
Oh, you could call it. I don't worry that if I stop helping people, people won't need me anymore. I always feel needed. And I know that I'm not trying to sound conceited, but I do always have that feeling. And I've never not had that feeling. And I do believe that because I did grow up with a brother who had intellectual disabilities, I always had to play a role of assistance. So I do see that in my own psychology. But to go along with that, like with my parents, anytime I had a need of my own, I always felt like I was being a burden. So I didn't ask for a lot as a kid. And when I did, it got very problematic. I think my computer just went off and made a big ding. So sorry about that. But, that's the bottom line is there is always, there's always a push-pull. And I do see that it went all the way back to my upbringing. Yeah.
And do you still feel like you're still a burden now if you ask for help?
Yes.
I feel like, is that kind of common with most adults, though? Because I always felt that way, too.
No. Some adults have zero problem.
Or like
Help for help. Zero.
like if you're struggling with stuff or like life is just hard that like you don't reach out to friends because you feel like you're a burden or like yeah, even if like let's say you're moving or something like that and you'd rather just try to do it all yourself because you feel like you're a burden. Or is that just me too?
Oh, yeah. I don't ask people for help when I'm doing things. I can hire someone, but I even feel guilty hiring someone. True. I feel guilty. And I will be like, oh, I don't want to make their life too hard. When someone is delivering something to the front door, I'm like, oh, here, let me help you. And often they'll be like, no, I'll got it. I got it. I got this big, heavy box. And I'm like, oh, let me be of assistance. Let me help. I see that, but I see people all around me now. They have no problem crossing their arms and judging harshly. They didn't move it correctly, so I just operate a little bit differently in that. And I've come to just accept that is how I am. I don't give it a lot of weight. I don't think it's bad. And I do know it has some costs. But it's just, I think when you grew up, I finally had to come to terms with how I grew up and where I grew up and in what circumstances I grew up, that I could be a burden if I asked for something in my family, because that was a lot, and that I needed to be of assistance pretty much always, because my brother was a year older than I was, so I kind of grew up in that particular understanding or mold.
So do you think in like a sibling dynamics, like the oldest child is usually that kind of person too? They're usually the ones that have to take care of their siblings, help their parents.
Oldest child. Tony, weren't you an oldest child? No, you were the youngest. Okay.
I'm debating.
Talk about you later. The spoiled ones. No. The oldest child often feels the most independence. The oldest child often feels like their needs are okay, and they have a little fewer problems asking for what they want. Now, every family's going to be different, so we can't just make these generalized rules. But I'm going to knock on the oldest children now, being of Jan Brady of the bunch, being in the middle, that the oldest child is often given what they want, is more focused upon, but they're also judged harsher. So in a weird way, the oldest child has a lot of eyes on them, which can be bad and can be good. By the time the youngest child comes along, they're often the sweet, wonderful one. That's what it is, Tony. You, the sweet, wonderful one, that you get eyes on you because you're sweet and wonderful, not because they're like worried that you're going to go outside the lines or cross the street or whatever it is. They're much less worried parents by that point, because they've done it a few times. So they've allowed themselves to like, oh, okay, it's okay when they play in the mud. It's okay when they go on the monkey bars and fall down, it's okay. But first child might be a little bit more worried about those things. So they might be very rulesy, and the oldest child's often breaking through that mold. Often has more independence, and the oldest child also is very bossy to the younger kids, may I say. Didn't you experience that, Tony?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Was an only child, so there's a whole set of problems with that one.
Ooh, so he was a bossy and a sweet child, right?
He was a bossy and sweet. Was he sweet?
I'm still sweet.
Still sweet.
But yeah, I did have
If
that.
people can hear the conversation that happened right before we began this park, so you would not agree with that, assessment. In fact, you were knocking me for what I had planned to say, and I'm like, that would have been nice to have a little bit beforehand.
Well, if you had time to get together,
It's always my fault. It's always my fault. Okay. So, do you say yes when you're screaming no inside? This really intrigued me because this has happened to me. Helpers often confuse being needed with being loved. I don't feel especially loved. So I don't know that I go all the way that far, but I feel a demand to do things. I think that's partly the feeling, that dark feeling of burden with somebody else. and the demand to help others. So it's this back and forth thing, I feel, that I need to be in that position. But sometimes I don't want to do something, and instead of just standing up and just saying no, I used to know this woman, Tamara. She was a therapist. Oh my God. I've never seen anyone say no with greater ease. Hi, Tamara. But I've never, and I always thought, she's amazing. She says no so much. It's absolutely phenomenal. How does she do that? But she just had no problem saying no all the time to everything.
I always try to just have like a escape route just in case whenever I'm like, oh, okay, sure, I can do that. And then hopefully that something doesn't work out that I can't do it if I truly don't want to do it.
Well, usually if I don't really want to do it, and I will often say something, but sometimes I'll avoid it completely. Especially if it's someone I don't know, I'll just try to like back off, not. Yeah.
So as you gotten older, it hasn't changed? Because I noticed let me ask you this, as a therapist, when my mother passed away almost 7 years ago, I feel like I switched. Like, I feel like because I was so worried about my mother her health and making sure she was okay. And, soon as she passed away, within just months, I felt like a whole different person of saying no and kind of standing up for myself. Where before she was always like, no, don't cause any issues. But I felt like my whole life switched.
Wow. Yes. No, that's actually something people say when their parents die. Did they actually feel more free to be themselves?
That's me.
Even at, any age, not just young ages, but at any age. So that's not unusual. I do not want my mom to die by any means, so that's maybe why I'm here. And I do not want it to happen, but I do understand that dynamic of.
Okay. I didn't know if it was just me, but that's the way I felt. I remember watching the Liberace movie, Behind the Candelabra, when his mother died and his boyfriend was like, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "I feel free." And even though we love our mother, we love, our parent, sometimes we put so much worry into losing the parent. And once we lose them, it does feel like a relief of like, oh my gosh, I don't have to worry anymore. And so that's when I felt like I've changed. Is that bad?
No, I think that's beautiful.
I think it's in fact quite common.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that stuck out for you when you watched that movie because it did resonate with you emotionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's not.
I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy. It's interesting that we all have this, kind of issue. Not all of us have this kind of issue, but we have it to different degrees. But the universal, often like with parent, is we often do feel a little suppression with our parents. Some people I talk to, especially people in therapy, feel it very profoundly, especially if they come from a culture where the parents' dictates really take precedence over the child's, no matter what age they are. Like, you have to go to medical school, you have to become a doctor, you have to marry this type of person, you have to do this. And many of them will follow that script even at their own detriment. So.
Okay.
So, yeah. So let's talk about people being needed, people addicted to being needed. I hate that word addiction, but nonetheless, this was, came out. These were based on several studies that were really interesting to me. I'll have them in the show notes, but really interesting. I won't go into them individually. You're welcome. But I will say that it was so fascinating because they were studies from around the world too. And we looked at that with the hustle culture, and I was looking at this with the helper group as well. I couldn't believe how interesting that was to me. Like I believe a Chinese study and another one from India, and these different. So you're seeing different countries, same issue. The Americans feel everyone's
a global thing.
Yeah, because essentially these family dynamics take hold with everybody. Everyone pretty much grows up in very universal circumstances. They may speak different languages, have different incomes, different parts of the world, different weather patterns, shelter, etc. But almost everyone grows up in a family structure. So there you go. So let's talk about feeling obligated when people feel that need, that twanging need to feel obligated to show concern and care and attentiveness even when they don't feel it inside. You know who feels that a lot? Service employees. So like working in a hotel or working in a spa or working in healthcare or many, many things. Brian, have you ever felt this feeling obligated to show care and attentiveness and concern even when you didn't feel it?
No.
What do you mean?
Because, I'm an emotional person. So it's like, if I don't really feel that, there's no way my body can be like, oh, we should do the right thing. Like I feel like you've seen me. If I see something that's like, oh my God, I feel like I should help. Yes. But
I thought you felt this at your retail job that you had.
that I actually had obligated to, no, I would just make it, my whole game of like the retail world was playing a game of making friends. I didn't care about that's how they tell you to behave and act whenever like customers come in and everything. You want to give them this customer experience, that's elevated and everything. But it wasn't like I was just trying to make friends. That's how I always saw it. I'd be like, oh, I'm just here meeting a new person and seeing how cool they are or something. But I wasn't me being fake or anything like, oh, I'm going to try to sell you this handbag. And by gassing you up, I always was like, I'm focusing more on like making a real connection, And that's how I've always just worked.
Okay. Well, then what were you saying earlier about your retail job and why?
Oh, how I hated it?
Yeah.
Oh,
This
yes.
is behind the curtain, folks. As he was telling me this story right before we began, in alignment with the show we're doing today, well, then all of a sudden you're the opposite.
Well, that's why I didn't stay there long. It was a summer, and I was like, all right, this is not for me. And they wanted me to stay longer, and I was like, yeah, I just hate it here because it was this toxic culture of like being forced into doing that. And that's just not how I wanted to work. I've never wanted to.
So you did feel forced into showing a way of being that was not real.
And no, that's the whole retail world, pretty much.
Okay.
But I just didn't like working like that. And I had a lot more.
I agree. It's the whole retail world. And I worked at Saks Fifth Avenue, but I kind of dug like being super friendly to people and talking to people. And I never mixed them up as friends, but I was always, chitty chatty, talk to them like, oh, hey, da. I never got too personal with them, but I was always extremely like, it was just made it pleasant for me to get through the day. And with the employees, we'd always dish and talk.
I mostly hated the employees. That's why with me, the clients, when they would come in and be like, oh my God, please talk to me. Like, I just want a friend because I hate everybody here. Oh, like, that was my way of like working where I'm like, I don't even care if we sell. Please just talk to me so I don't talk to them.
And Tony, when you worked as a personal trainer. I think that's a real helping profession as well. Did you ever have to fake it there?
Yeah. Well, as a personal trainer, no, because most of my clients, I really would get to know them before I even took them on.
Oh, okay.
But I was also worked at a physical therapy office where I was a physical therapy aide. Some of those people, for some reason, they would always give me the most difficult people because I got along with everybody. And there were people I'm like, okay, these people are very difficult. I'm just going to smile, even though I don't want to work with them. And I always won them over, but it just was like, oh my God, I don't want Debbie Downers, type of people. And I just would smile through it. And yeah, it wasn't my favorite thing to do. But my personal training, most of those people would become very close friends or even second family to me. So.
See, that's wonderful. You know, you're reminding me of a cartoon that they had up during my training at UT Austin when I was there.
Dennis the Menace? Just kidding.
No, it was just this woman screaming at the therapist, and she's saying, quite literally, she's saying in the cartoon, if you weren't so stupid, you could help me understand why nobody likes me.
I've had a few of those. Why doesn't anybody else want to work with me? That type
Zero
of thing.
self-awareness. Zero self-awareness. They always blame it on other people, as we call it externalization of blame, like pushing it on other people.
They just don't understand me.
They don't understand. And the person often stuck working with them. So here, probably when you're working with them, you had to do something called surface acting. And Brian, you had to do that. And I probably had to do that at times in my life. It's putting on a mask of warmth and helpfulness, not because it's authentic, but because they feel their identity, or the person feels their identity or value depends on it. So when you're a caretaker for an irascible person, a person who's difficult to work with, some people in-home caretakers, but the nurses who are working with my brother's been extremely combative over the last couple of days, and has been, he's really struggling. He doesn't understand all that's happening to him. And he's in a lot of pain, and he's restless, and he wants to get up, and he wants to, do things. He has pneumonia. I mean, he's off the intubation tube. He's septic. There were so many medical difficulties with him. You don't just bounce back. He is getting better. He's getting much better, but his difficulty, and restlessness, and combined with his strength as a human being, is difficult. And I can see that the nurses perhaps have to put on that mask when they deal with things as well.
Well, I think it's a lot of nurses that I feel like that have to do that, and just being attacked often by like the customers that are at the hospital, especially in the ER. Everybody's like aggravated from being in the waiting room, and then from the nurses to have to deal with those angry people being cursed at, being assaulted, like all these things, and then still to have to put on a customer service face in front of everybody. I find it so difficult. I don't know how nurses literally work.
Well, they are extreme versions of this, and surface acting, I think, is a very common way for them to be that feeling of need to present warmth and helpfulness, and to do tasks and be pleasant at the same time. This is very common, and in nursing culture, there's really a disease of not taking care of yourself, putting everybody's needs in front of your own. So nurses really are in a tough position in that particular way. Now, it just because someone goes into nursing doesn't mean every single nurse is going to be this way, but you see it commonly within the nursing culture, more so than doctors or other types of professions. You probably see it with any kind of mental health practitioner. I see a lot of this. In fact, a lot of therapists I know. Let me dish on therapists if I can for a second. I don't always like to be around other therapists because they often aren't real. I mean, they feel like they need to keep the mask up all the time. And I'm like, dude, talk like a human being. Like, crack a joke. And then they'll go, you'll say something, they'll go,
Oh, give us some names.
Everyone I know. It's really yeah, no, I've often believed you have to be a human being in your own life outside of the therapy office.
You have to clock out.
You do have to clock out. And in fact, I try to be a human being with my clients as well. I'm just trying to be a human being all around. But in general, I don't give people the unless that's what's called for in the moment.
Yeah.
I don't do it because I'm trying to get them to react and to find this or that. I'm working with them. I try to be a little more hands-on than some other therapists, I think. But it's really hard for me when I like run into them in the hallway and they're just being weird. I mean, that's all I can say. I know, isn't that bad? I'm I doubt any of them will listen to me because When I was on the TV show, therapists would be like, I'm not going to watch your show. And I'd be like, fine. Good. Okay. I don't know.
So you guys are weirdos.
Do you think I'm a weirdo?
I mean, your own way, yeah.
At least he's honest, Emil.
Well, I feel like you, outside of work, you've got your man brain, that frat boy brain that I call it. And that's just how your real self works, Like, that's your true self, where it's like at work, that's not how you behave or like joke around and stuff. But I appreciate you because I wouldn't work with you or hang out with you if you were like those like very professional and buttoned up people outside of work,
Okay.
But yeah, you are a little weird. I feel like you kind of have to be a weirdo to have a little fun in life, no?
In a good way.
In a good way, not like
It's good.
yeah, weird.
So I'm not going to argue that being weird is good. I loved living in Austin because when I lived in Austin, the saying there was keep Austin weird. The problem with Austin now is it's gotten less weird, and that's sad because the weirdness was my absolute favorite part of it. Not just the beauty and the people, etc., but just the weird stuff was so embracing and so wonderful. Just made you believe in humanity. It's just pleasant.
Weird is like the new cool, I would say.
Oh, okay.
Instead of being so cool or like so perfect or professionalized, just like somebody being just real. I think that's cool.
But we often call someone weird when we don't like them too. I mean, weird cuts both ways. Does
Like, he's so weird.
There's bad weird. Let's face it.
No, I would just say they're lame or something like that.
Lame? You mean they can't walk?
Oh, okay, just kidding.
Okay. So over time, this disconnection between that surface acting, not being true to yourself, not being authentic, putting on that fake warmth, that performative support, like you have to perform support. Over time, this disconnection leads to emotional exhaustion because you're not being yourself on the surface. And it actually takes a lot of emotional energy to hold something down and to put something else forward.
For example, whenever, let's say, you hang out with somebody that you're really close with and you never feel like you have to perform.
Oh my God.
Right? And
these are my friends, my good friends.
Okay, but then, whenever you're going to like a friend's get together or something, and then it's other people.
I don't like it.
And then you have to perform.
I don't
feel like you have to be this other person instead of just being you in sweatpants and whatever you want to talk about, Now you have to tell stories and describe your background.
I don't like
Yeah.
No, I've got some good friends. These people I've known for years. My old friends that I've known for years, my friend who listens to this podcast, Missy, I can, when I'm around her, I can just be, which I truly appreciate. And I love that feeling. Monique,
yeah.
I feel that way. I can just be, like I don't have to try. My friend Jill, we disagree about so much. I don't care. We disagree. We agree on all the important things, like where to have lunch. But we disagree on maybe some big life issues, but we're really, I value her typically. These are all women. I feel that way with you. I can just be with you as I can spit with you too. No, and it's really, there are certain people that I can just be with and not have to worry about. But I do know that performance thing. And when there's a new person involved, I don't care how amazing and wonderful they are, then it just makes you more stiff and
exhausted.
Even
thinking about it, you're like, oh God, I'm so tired. I don't even want to.
Oh, I very much still have friends. Oh God.
But see, you can see
okay,
how.
Let me just say, I'm not even going to say who it is, but you know who you are. Would call to say, hey, do you guys want to have dinner Thursday night? Come over to our house. We'd come over, and then there'd be people you weren't expecting there. And it's like, that's you're expecting, like, let's go over to their house for dinner. Everything's going to be, but then when you don't know someone else is going to come, you get there and you're like, what? Now I have to put on my nice hat, you know?
You know,
And I, and they don't see that as a problem. They're inviting people to dinner. They don't see that other people have to be warned that there may be other guests there. So they operate a little differently, and that's not unusual, but it's very funny to me that we all operate differently. I'm always concerned about the mix,
oh yeah,
and
if they'll
having
get along.
people will get along. I feel very like, oh, are they all going to have a good time? Maybe everyone's going to have a good time. So that's my shit of my stuff. That is, everyone's got to be a good time. I'm like always like I follow that host model. A host is both a hoe and a saint. And so I'm trying to put on a show when I'm hosting, and I'm trying to be super nice so that, it's a little exhausting. But when it's your orchestra, then it's not as exhausting. I think you feel physically exhausted, but it's always fun to play host. And I wish I did it more because those are always extremely fun times. We try to do it on New Year's and stuff. And those are extremely fun. So I've got friends who I definitely feel that with, and that's a really good point. I don't feel that emotional exhaustion. In fact, generally what I feel is an emotional recharging of the battery. So, and I, love just, hanging out, like just watching a movie.
Yeah. Ordering in and watching TV.
Oh,
that's like my favorite.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So when people get too much of a surface acting, they have this emotional hangover. So you feel like, I just spent a week with people I didn't know. Going on a vacation, it's so funny. Vacations can be that way too, when you have to encounter other people. What?
No, I mean, I just hear about it all the time when people go as groups on vacations and everything, and I'm like, I would kill myself. To have to manage
It's a
all
big price to pay. I'll go on a vacation with a group.
to kill myself.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I would never really do it, but like, I just would rather not go if like it's gonna be a huge group and then having to deal with like if it's not everybody that I'm like super close with, if there's some like randoms, I'm like I would rather just not interact, So some people I can do it. I see a lot of group friends are always traveling. And I'm like, I hope you guys are the bestest friends because I could just see how annoying that could be.
So Tony put up the visual number 1, and I don't have it in front of me, but I seem to remember this. This is what does it say here? Just read it to me.
It says surface acting,
yes,
emotional exhaustion, burnout, and turnover.
Yes. Okay. So really, it should be the other way around. The surface acting, sorry, leads to emotional exhaustion, which will lead to burnout. Yeah, which will lead to turnover. Is that the order it's in? Yeah, turnover is the last thing, because once you're burned out, you're like, I can't work here anymore. And we really concerned about this with people in helping professions. And so being true to yourself is really, really important. And that's why when you're going into a helping profession, it really is good to be in sync with who you are. I picked a profession. I actually don't feel that. I don't feel withdrawal or resentment. That's another consequence of burnout, withdrawal or resentment, or that, turnover of wanting to leave. I don't feel that at all. In fact, I don't know. I feel quite edified by working with people.
Yeah, and I can vouch for that because we've talked, even when I first met you, I would always ask you if you would get emotionally drained from dealing with like each client every day and everything. And you'd always say the same thing, that you never felt that way, which I thought was cool because I know I couldn't do it. Like I would be.
I hear people say that all the time. Yeah. I mean, they go, "How do you do it? I couldn't do it." And I'm like, I don't know.
And like, if I would try to fix everybody's problem, I'd be like, "Get in the car. We're gonna go fix this right now."
Well, you know what? I do have a trick. And I do have a trick because I actually kind of had to come to this. And I've worked with physicians, and I've had to, when physicians are dealing with a great deal of burnout, we work essentially on this model, which is this model, which as I work on, which is essentially when people come to you, they already have what they have. When they're coming to you, the only role you have is to help them get better. So even if you couldn't help them all the way, at least you can help them a part of the way. So that takes some of the responsibility away. Like if somebody, you can prescribe a medication, but you can't make them take the medication. So you can do your part to help them, but then they have to do their part to help themselves as well. When people come to me, often I'll even feel excited, like this is something I can work with. And I'll really love when I have clients who are really dedicated, like they want to get better. Those people get better. The people who come in and it's like, I really want to do this. The people who sit back with their arms folded and they say, tell me, just you fix me. Now, not being as tough for you as possible.
Oh, God.
Those people often don't want to get better, but they do. They want to like kind of march in time. But most people do want to get better. When they come into a therapist, it's a huge thing. I mean,
On their own, right?
on their own, yeah, it's huge because they probably thought about it for months or years. They've had to invest the money, the time to do it, and then they have to deal with the emotional fallout of going.
Yeah.
So-
Coming to terms to actually doing it and going and accepting the help that you want. Because that's a big part of admitting to that almost, you know.
I'll tell you when I do feel tough is often like somebody's in the middle of something very emotional during a session and I have to go because I have a client in the next hour and I have to go get them, up and out. I have to go to the restroom, finish my notes, then see the next person. And that is extremely difficult. I often say the 10 minutes between clients is the most difficult time for me. And every now and then you have people who linger. And no, it's not, I mean, I understand because I'm like, when I'm chatting with somebody, I don't just like want to rush out the door. And they don't understand because, I mean, they don't operate from that model. So I understand where they're coming from, but it's often a little bit of a stress. I always say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we have to go," and they're often extremely polite, and there's never a problem, or generally never one, once in a while. But in general, that's one of the tougher parts.
I get that. And maybe because I know how this works, because with my therapist, I'm always looking at the time just to make sure I'm like, okay,
You don't have to,
Lori. I know, but like for
it's
me,
their job.
I know, but at the same time, I also don't want to prep myself for like, okay, I'm going to talk about this and I know I'm going to like linger or spiral out of it and then have him like, be late to his next client. Like that, at the end of the day, it's still a business and I see it that way. And I'm really OCD about time, but I'm like, okay, I've got 10 more minutes. I can talk to you about this one more thing, Yeah, that's how I am, but I know I can see where some people are just lost in it.
So this is really me sometimes because helpers, when they do feel that surface thing, especially when I'm with people that I feel like they're taking advantage of me or I feel used in a situation, burnout, it says, the research shows that burnout hits hard. I will say that resentment also hits hard for me. Like, or withdrawal. Like if I'm having someone I feel like they're using me. And in therapy, it could come up when people ask for a price reduction, which I'm not saying ask your therapist for a price reduction if you actually really need one. I mean, that's fine. But I've often had people who have means, will express that desire, and sometimes that's. I know in my head that if I do such a thing, that's going to lead to problems, so I don't do it. So
Yeah.
I know, isn't that? I'm just admitting all the dark sides here. But yeah, you could feeling used or feeling taken for granted. This is something that can really happen. I see it happen with helping professions all the time. It often ends with emotional withdrawal, detachment from relationships, even full-blown relationship turnover. If you're in a relationship where someone's always gimme, 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 make dinner every night or whatever. I mean, whatever. Oh, the house wasn't clean enough. That person could actually be pushing their partner away. So, yeah. So what is the solution here? It's deep acting. Deep acting is more integrated values-based approach. So values are really how you want to be in the world. I always say to people, who's the man you want to be? Who's the woman you want to be? Who's that person that you really want to be? And a value is a point on the horizon that you're always going toward. Do you want to be a family person? Do you want to be successful? Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be, whatever, like have community? What are the values that are really directing you? And those values can really help you to act from a deeper place. Like when I worked at SAC, I'm not saying I did this effectively, but I do remember that I would get so bored. I shouldn't say his, but you work on the floor in that store, and not sometimes customers don't come through at a great pace. And sometimes they do, but there were times like I think January or February, like where I down months, like when it was dead, and I would sit there and I'd be like bored, and I would think, well, what do I do? It's like, oh, I'd see someone, they'd walk in, I'd be like, hi, how are you? Blah blah blah. What's so funny was because I did that, because I talked to everybody and because I was trying to entertain me. I mean, it was trying to my value was to, I guess at that time I was, in my teens, I was wanting to have fun. So to have fun to me meant connecting with other people. And, that ended up me being the best salesperson in the store, which cracks me up because I was part-time, and they're like, because I had the highest number of sales in the store. Because I would chat with people.
And that's how I worked with Bendy, because I hated the other employees that when the customer would come in, I'd be like, hi, talk to me, please. So I get what you're saying.
So that's, not to say that value is the same now. I don't try to have fun everything I do now, but I do like to have that. But that was certainly a value that was operational at that point.
But you thought it worked.
Yeah.
Because you weren't trying to sell,
No,
of course, what you to sell. They're genuine. You're just I'm having a good time. And people are attracted to you being real,
And I'd find people interesting, be like, who are you? That's you. I've got to talk to you. Anyway, it helps you feel aligned with who you are. So you're operating from a real place, not because you fear being irrelevant or unloved. And these individuals who act from a deeper place are more emotionally present without neglecting themselves. So you can be true to yourself. And this results in true satisfaction and sustainable connection, not just being needed, but being valued. And that's that deep acting place is very interesting because you can do that with your good friends. You can do that with people who are close. And I do it with family, which means sometimes I don't present in the nicest way. Sometimes with family, I express my crankiness. I do. The closer, the crankier.
That is crazy that we do that.
You said doo-doo.
I know. I caught myself after I said it. I was like, I'm bad. I said.
So if we're talking the workplace, satisfaction in employees will lead to retention. So if they act from a deeper place, they'll feel more emotional connection. They'll feel more satisfaction, and that will lead them to retention. And you can put up the other graphic to do that, to kind of illustrate that kind of a comparison between the two. But the bottom line is when you're true to yourself and you can be with people in a more genuine way and you work in a job that reflects your own values, don't go into a helping profession if you don't want to help people. That's just a bad match. I don't care how much it pays. It's a bad match. So you can go into a profession that more aligns with you and you're going to be more satisfied and you're going to stay in that job longer. But helpers specifically, especially helpers and healers with boundaries and internal alignment are more likely to maintain meaningful and healthy relationships, both with their patients, their clients, with people, their salespeople, etc. I used to know a salesman, by the way. He was hugely successful salesman, hugely successful. But he he always told me that he just goes there and he just has a ball with people. And that's what he does. He doesn't even care about the product. He says, I just go and have a good time. Brian, do you have any questions for us?
Yes. Okay, we have a few that we can go over before we finish up. The first one is, how do I know if I'm actually being helpful or if I'm just trying to control everything through kindness?
If you have to ask that question, there's probably an issue. I will say, you're trying to control everything through kindness. Yeah, people who are annoyingly kind, that's an issue. Some people are naturally sweet, but you do have to ask yourself, do you feel that burnout? Do you feel that resentment? Do you feel that withdrawal? Then there might be a problem. So maybe you have to look at the results of what you're doing.
Because I could see this where, like, I had friends come over to cook dinner like a few weeks ago, and I was so happy to have my friends over to like make food. But my friends are messy, and every time they would do something or like wash their hands or something, even if it was just water, it would be like water getting on the counter or like anything spilling on the floor. So I'm like, oh, let me do this. Let me do the dishes. Let me do this. Just because I wanted to have control. So it might have seemed like being nice, but it was me genuinely trying to control everything so there wouldn't be a mess or things weren't getting spilled, you know?
Yep.
So I feel like this question is right up my alley.
When you have friends over, see, I mean, yeah, you want to work on that because what is a deep acting place there? Maybe you have to focus on community in that moment and let go of some of the control.
I know.
Focus on what it is you invited them over for, to have a good time, to have community, to have fun, not to fix a good meal. And that you have to let go of maybe that demand to be clean or that demand to be perfect.
I know. That's why I'm like, oh, this question is like, it actually makes sense because, like I said, I just showed you guys that's literally how I was acting. Okay, we'll do one more.
Okay.
I always feel guilty when I set boundaries, even tiny ones. How do I stop feeling like a bad person for just taking care of myself?
Okay, so if you're setting a boundary, and you feel bad, like a bad person, you're doing that to yourself. So what that basically that equation is, if I do this action, setting a boundary, is a bad thing, and I'm a bad person for doing it. I feel bad. I feel guilty. So what we have to back up from, are you a bad person? You, a total person, bad because you did a thing that was bad. And we're starting there. We're not going to argue about the boundary quite yet. But are you bad for doing a bad thing?
No.
If you help 100 old ladies across the street, are you a good person?
No.
Okay, good. Because if you help the 101st old lady, if you walk her across the street and then you steal her purse,
or throw her in front of the car.
Is that? Oh God! Well, that would be a bad prairie violence. Stealing her purse is bad enough.
Still trying to make the point bad.
Just as awful. But if you throw it, but if you do that, then you're not a bad person. You did a bad thing. And a lot of people will say they are a good person if they help 100 old ladies across the street. They'll say, I'm a good person. Look at me. I do good things. But they're doing good things. They're not necessarily a good person, and you're not a bad person for doing bad things. Now let's back up to boundaries. Why did the person do the boundary setting? Because that was what they needed to do to preserve themselves. And I often talk to people about the image when you go on a plane. I saw someone else do this on a podcast. It cracked me up because I'm like, I thought that was mine, that I developed in a plane, because I did. But we all take planes, so we all see the same damn thing. We're sitting there on the plane, and the flight attendant does the little fake mask, and then they do the fake rubber band over the top of their head. They never touch their hair. They just pull it up to show you that it could possibly go over your head. And they always instruct people to put it on yourself first. Put the mask on first before assisting your child or anybody else. And people will go, oh, I would never do that. I would always help the other person. But why do they say that? Because you could pass out before you get it onto your child.
Yeah.
So if you can put it on yourself first, then you'll have the bandwidth, you'll have the availability, the oxygen to help them. So that is important to do. So yes, you must help yourself. And in this case, that would be setting the boundary, which would be a good thing to do. Even if you label it bad, so be it. That's your own guilt trip, but don't call yourself bad for having done it.
I like that. Thank you.
Well, I guess that's it. We in our show notes, we're going to have something really special because we had a 10-question quiz. Are you a helper or helpless? So you can take this quiz yourself, and it's a little more nuanced, and then some points to help you get through. But that's it. And we're joining for Off the Couch. We're gonna be so much more ahead next week. But our studio's getting together, and it was really great to be here. Thanks for joining us on Off the Couch. If you saw yourself in any of today's patterns, take a breath. You're not broken. You're just human. And remember, insight is the first step, but action is what moves the needle. So whether it's breaking a pattern or reaching out to someone new or simply being kinder to yourself, that is the real work. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. We really like that. Like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. We're on Apple and Spotify and wherever you listen. Go to the studies on my YouTube page. That's where the show notes are, youtube.com/Dr. Greg. And until next time, what would you say? Keep up those boundaries, I guess. Keep questioning your own patterns and do what you can to do best. Hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Tony bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.